I know some people are already sick of hearing about it, but the XZ situation will go down in history alongside things like Heartbleed, Spectre and Meltdown, Left Pad, and all of the other situations you've heard about plenty of times before. And as a situation, it could have truly been a lot worse if it didn't get caught really, really early and dealt with before shipping out on the major distros. And we've heard a lot about the person who caused the issue, the maintainer who left them in charge, but you probably haven't heard a ton about how the distros actually responded. And recently, OpenSUSE put out this post, what we need to take away from the XZ backdoor. Now, for context, they did ship the malicious package on their Tumbleweed project, and if this wasn't caught early, this could have been seriously bad because they were shipping the OpenSSH patch that linked to system denotifications that caused the exploit to actually happen. Now, when the XZ situation went public, it seemed like it just appeared, and then everybody suddenly had a solution, and then a couple of days later, everything was resolved. But it's not like they suddenly just heard about it and then suddenly fixed it. This happened a little bit earlier. A few days before the public disclosure of the XZ backdoor, the SUSE product security team got a hint that there is something odd with the XZ 5.6.x releases. I am the SUSE employee and OpenSUSE packager that was updating and including this version into OpenSUSE Tumbleweed, so I got involved in this quite early. By that time, no context and information that was shared in the initial public disclosure was available to us. However, that hint was all the information that we needed. It changed the way we looked at an established central open source project. Without that, the odd small diff in the configure stage of the build system would have been easily disregarded. One day before disclosure, on Thursday evening, SUSE Product Security received a longer and detailed report from Andres Freund, that being the guy that originally made everything public. Via the shared distro security disclosure list, the distros list is an encrypted mailing list where distributors collaborate and coordinate on disclosures of security issues, that being the OSS security mailing list. I've done a video on this in the past, but a bunch of the distros that you know about, along with things in the BSD world as well, are on this list. So when you see a bunch of distros all respond to something at the exact same time, it is highly likely that something was disclosed on this list first before everybody seeing it publicly. Not every single individual distro is here, but basically all of the main distro bases are covered, along with additional projects using that same base. For example, both Debian and Ubuntu have contacts here, along with all of the other things you see here. You see Alma Linux, separate from Red Hat, so on and so forth. This report brought the new knowledge that the XZ backdoor specifically targeted OpenSSH, which is one of the network-facing parts of nearly every Linux system. This even further increased our threat level to be of a remote access backdoor and also caused us to widen our planned communication efforts. If you ever discover a security vulnerability, whether it be minor or especially if it's major, the responsible thing to do is always report it privately first. That doesn't mean you can't talk about it publicly, but always give them a heads up and say when you're going to talk about it, because you want to make sure they have the ability to address it before everybody else finds out. Now, if they say, I don't want to fix it, I have no interest in dealing with this, release it publicly, they can deal with it then. With initial information that there is something suspicious, it was relatively easy to find more suspicious things in no particular order. OpenSUSE and SUSE track release artifact signatures with a keyring of trusted signatures. But at some point, the project was handed off from Las Collins to Giatan. Now, under normal circumstances, there would be nothing weird about this. There are often cases where a new maintainer takes over, a project is handed off to somebody else. That's not weird, and that by itself is okay. Assuming the other things didn't happen, it wasn't great that the web of trust of this new signing key was not well connected, which could have raised an alert, but it was signed by the previous maintainer, and that was sufficient to us. This by itself is okay. But we know in hindsight the rest of what went on. Looking at the commit history, there was a flurry of commits between the last 5.5 beta and the 5.6.0 release in a short time window by that new maintainer, not coming via a pull request and no obvious review or discussion on it. This was immediately concerning. Normally projects not just do that before a major new release. Reviewing every single commit immediately showed odd test files being committed, those being the test files being used in the exploit, and updated in 5.6.1. And that did not have corresponding updates in the test framework or in the project code. So these were unused. Normally test files are committed alongside a code fix in the same commit or with a reference to a prior issue or a commit the test case is addressing. For an experienced maintainer of an upstream project, this seemed like a big oversight. In hindsight, we know it wasn't an oversight. The commit messages were sort of plausible, but not really making sense, especially when comparing the small difference between 5.6.0 and 5.6.1. And Giatan was going around to distros, making it very clear that he wanted people to be shipping 5.6.1. Further investigation led to finding the stage 0 embedded in the build system, and with that, we're able to step through the layers of obfuscation to untangle the second and third stage. Stage 0 being the trigger added to the build that caused the attack to happen. Within minutes, it became clear to us that very significant effort was spent on developing it. It wasn't the work of a single developer on a rainy Sunday afternoon. This wasn't a developer who just had a bad day who wanted to go rogue with the project. This was a long time in the making. Also, the second stage hinted that this was a backdoor that was specifically targeted at only specific environments, Debian or RPM package builds using GCC and libc. Now at this point, they were not aware of the full extent of the attack. They knew that their RPM packages were not using XZ for compression anymore. They swapped off of that a long time ago. But it was often being used for the compression of tarballs. And the worst case scenario to think of here is that the unpacking of the GCC compiler build sources was being modified by the malicious XZ, and we have a system compiler that was no longer trustworthy. Although we do have signature checks on the sources and have secured copies of every source input we've ever used in a trusted look-aside store, we have no checks whether the unpacked sources are actually the sources that were signature checked prior to unpacking. That might sound like a worst case possible attack, but it isn't the first time it's been thought of. Going back to 1984, we have Reflections on Trusting Trust by Ken Thompson, where he basically describes the idea of a compromised compiler that is injecting code that you didn't realize is getting injected, but because the compiler is what is injecting code, everything that has been compiled with that compiler can no longer be trusted. So you need to bootstrap an entirely clean system to even know whether you can trust anything that you're compiling on your system. Now, initially, like most of the distros, OpenSUSE shipped out a downgraded package, and that seemed like it would probably be fine to deal with the problem. However, due to the unknown nature of the obfuscated backdoor, we were planning with the worst assumption. We started collecting how many packages have been built and released with the build of the suspect GCC compiler within the build environment. It was a very large list. Also making sense of the reversing of the malicious backdoor object code in Ghidra would take us another couple hours. After a short sync, we decided to go the safe route and throw away every package that was built with the potentially malicious XZ/GCC and started rebuilding all of them with only packages that were coming from a safe backup to restore integrity of our distribution as quickly as possible. It's important to remember that this was never confirmed as an attack vector, but when you know there is one backdoor, the entire system becomes suspect, and anything touching that code, which in this case could be the entire system if GCC is what got affected, you kind of need to just throw everything out and start again from scratch. You can get away without doing that if you're just a regular individual user, but when you're a distro that thousands upon thousands of people rely on, you need to take the safest approach possible. Now, OpenSUSE made the safe assumption that this story would get a lot of attention. I was part of that attention, but I definitely wasn't most of it. This got covered by basically everybody in the tech space. I believe some of the massive, just general tech channels talked about it as well. I know there was mainstream coverage of it. It got covered in news.com.au, who doesn't care about anything tech related. So the next focus is preparing for the public disclosure. Combining all of what we've learned so far, the picture became clear. Somebody had spent years of preparation to lay down the groundwork, build up a good maintainer reputation, take over the project, and then choose a point in time that was a critical window for several distribution projects and in the middle of Lunar New Year, as well as other holidays, to release a new version with new features and an obfuscated backdoor that was well crafted to target only specific distributions, namely those using GCC, binutils, glibc with RPM or Debian build processors on x86-64. A time where a lot of people just are taking time off the project and aren't really giving it their full attention and are focusing on things in the real world and didn't do the amount of digging that was needed to find something like this. And for a project that had been safe for so many years, why would you do that digging? It didn't seem like it needed it. By the time of the public disclosure, all work streams had already completed. We identified the list of affected products and had already released all updates for all affected ones. Communication was ready to be put online and sent out to the relevant parties. All of that was possible because many people went above and beyond, put everything else aside to react timely and with a lot of engagement to ensure we haven't missed anything or overlooked anything. All this while a long public holiday weekend had already started. Kudos to everyone who was working around the clock on preparing for this. So Linus Law and the distributions. You've probably heard this 1,000 times before. Given enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow. In open source communities, this is cited a lot as a reason for why open source can be trusted. For open source projects that are attracting enough attention from sufficiently skilled contributors, this law probably has at least some weight. However, we learned, for example, from Heartbleed that these preconditions are not universally fulfilled. There are many projects that are absolutely essential and are considered boring and fail to attract a lot of maintainers or contributors, and those who are on the project are buried under a pile of work already and can't really spend significant effort on ramping up new joiners. Being able to inspect source code of open source software gives the community an unbeatable advantage over proprietary single vendor alternatives. However, auditing source code is time expensive and often needs highly experienced domain and security experts. Commercial distributions should and are playing an important role in this, yet they have not identified this. The XZ project was, in that sense, the perfect blind spot for how effort is typically allocated for security audits. Very deeply nested and important for every distribution due to non-obvious reasons, and in the state of only one maintainer and very few contributors or reviewers for years. It is not some shiny new cloud native or otherwise fancy new open source project that attracts thousands of developers or security researchers, and yet it is just as important for the integrity and security of modern computers. If there is anything to learn here, it is that the selection criteria for where to focus on needs to be adjusted with these learnings. This project is basically the definition of XKCD 2347. All modern digital infrastructure, a project some random person in Nebraska has been thanklessly maintaining since 2003. Just replace this with a project that has now been handed off to some completely unknown developer who is actually malicious, and this project is in the base package of basically every distro. Furthermore, others have already emphasized the initial attack vector wasn't technical. It was an archaic tarball. The actual initial attack was social engineering and used toxic behavior in communities. This is real, and not only in this case affects the existing maintainers of open source projects. Many stories have been told where maintainer stress or burnout was connected to toxic participants in the project communities. Although I believe the distributions are not part of those activities, we are not set up to prevent these things from happening. The distribution developers are focused on their issues and their users and are, due to their limited time, risking to neglect the upstream open source communities This is another thing we need to keep in mind. FOSS, free Libre open source software, is not about cost or about being free to use, but about the freedom to inspect and reuse. What is the cost of that freedom? In the proprietary world, software is paid for, either directly or through other means. In open source, this freedom needs to receive the recognition it deserves and needs to be valued. When somebody refers to the XZ backdoor as a software supply chain security incident, this is not the full picture. A software supply chain would be where there is a supplier at one end, but open source projects and communities are not suppliers today. They have no legally binding contract with any of their consumers, and there is no exchange of money involved. There exists a community, varying in size, that contributes and assists either as volunteers or as paid workers. Most projects are not receiving enough of it. As an open-ended thought, should distributions actively build up and maintain their supply chain and treat their suppliers as real suppliers with legally binding mutual terms and conditions and agreed upon compensations? I think many developers out there in the FOSS space would be willing to accept some sort of paid contract. The problem is I don't know if the distros have enough money, which they probably don't in the current state they're in, to actually do that with enough of the key projects. In this particular incident, signed tables were used to publish the launcher of the backdoor. Many things have been said about that. I am one of the people who've said many things. We need to realize that this is a distraction, a trap. In terms of code size, 99.9% of the backdoor was in the source code repository. The launcher in the table was to limit the exposure of the backdoor to only the intended victims, not technically needed for anything or by anything. It would have been equally easy to embed and equally hard to spot, with the rest of the 0.1% being also committed inside the project code repository, just in a marginally different way. I don't think it was a distraction. I think it was a legitimate part of the discussion. It is certainly true that it is a very small part of it. However, without that part being done, there is a chance it would have been spotted earlier. By embedding it in the table, it limited the number of eyes that were ever going to see it. Most people are not checking the table. If they even know XZ exists in the first place, they look at the Git repo and see what is in there. Now distros are aware to not blindly trust the table, and those need to be inspected just as much as the repo. We recognize the XZ backdoor is cleverly built, yet it had surprising flaws in execution. Whoever is interested in embedding further backdoors has learned from the extensive public coverage of everything that went wrong. These mistakes have been pointed out, published, and learned from. We have given the actors behind this backdoor free training for future attacks. It is time that distributions learn from this as well, and also take training lessons. We need to actively collaborate and build a strong, reliable web of trust with open source projects and each other to be prepared to handle the inevitable future challenges that will come. Let's build a secure web of trust together. And I think that is a good message to end on. This is not the first or the last situation we are going to have. There is going to be more in the future, and this one was handled relatively well. And hopefully, the next time it happens, that is handled fairly well as well. But we'll have to wait and see and look at what the distros are going to do. If you want to get involved in your distro, absolutely go and do so, whether that be funding them with donations or actually getting involved and helping to be maintaining yourself, if you obviously have the skill set to do so. But that's going to be it for today. So if you like the video, go like the video. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, subscribe to the LiberaPay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and open sus.